Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Show. Coming up on the show today, deadline day is fast approaching. We look at what potential drama might lie ahead for some clubs and what it actually looks like from behind the scenes. Celtic are on cloud nine with a thumping win at Tannadice against the Dundee United side in freefall. We'll look at whether anyone can stop Ange Postecoglou's men in our SPFL roundup. And unbeaten in 5, Ayr United are leading the way at the top of the Scottish Championship. We're joined by the Honest Men's Managing Director Graeme Mathie to discuss their impressive start to the new campaign. Yes, hello, I'm your host, Findlay Marks, wearing the captain's armband this week in place of Andrew Slavin. Joining me on the show today is West Ham United's Laura Brannan.
Hello.
Hello. And Football Scotland writer Euan Robertson. Hello, Euan.
Good evening.
We've got lots to get through this week, but as always, we kind of like to start the show by asking just if there's been anything that's caught your eye over the weekend. So, Laura, was there anything that caught your eye?
Super John McGinn. I covered the Aston Villa versus West Ham game on Sunday, and I was fangirling a bit in the tunnel when I got to stand next to him as he was about to lead the teams out just before kickoff. So that kind of, West Ham won the game, which is obviously the most important part of the day. But for me personally, I was just happy that Super John McGinn was there. That's the reason I was in Birmingham.
I did notice that photo from Laura in the tunnel. I think you're standing next to Declan Rice, and then McGinn was there in the background. But I mean, from my point of view, nothing as exciting or as high profile, but I loved Lee Johnston's reaction to the St Mirren fan shouting your team's absolutely brutal, and he honestly just admitted saying you're not wrong, pal. I quite like Lee Johnston off the park in terms of, he's very honest, he says it how it is, he's not scared to have a bit of a laugh. It was quite funny earlier on in the season when he said it was embarrassing or something, words to that effect, that there was no fourth official in the game, in the same game when Hibs played a player who was already suspended. So the irony of that was quite amusing, but he's great for a soundbite, which is, as a journalist in Scottish football, that's exactly what you want.
Can imagine him down the pub, can't you?
Yeah, 100%. I think he's just a funny guy. I just really like him.
He's pretty good value. I really like him too. One thing for me that I'd seen, I'm sure many people had seen this weekend, was Lee Griffiths making a goal-scoring start to life at Mandurah City, down under here in Australia, slightly closer to home. So, yeah, that was interesting. Mandurah City are they play just down the coast outside of Perth a little bit in Western Australia, and play in the Football West State League Division 1, which is the division below the National Premier League Western Australia, which is the highest semi-pro tier for that state. There was an interesting thing after the game as well, where Mandurah City have been potentially facing sanctions from the league for raising their ticket prices to cash in on Lee Griffiths appearing for the team. They've raised their ticket prices from £3 to £10. So some rank profiteering going on there.
If only Scottish football had that problem.
Football, bloody hell.
One of the most hyped days off the park in the football calendar is that of transfer deadline day, which for Scottish clubs will be coming this Thursday when the window slams shut at midnight. The window's been open for 3 whole months, but are things about to ramp up this week? To find out, we're joined by the Sun journalist Alan Potts to give us the lowdown on what's happening. Alan, thanks for joining us. Are you predicting a busy night on Thursday?
Yeah, I think it could well be. I think there'll be a few people still looking to get a few guys in the door. Others, maybe not so much. But you know what Scottish football's like? It's like a pantomime. No matter what's happening, everybody seems to think it'll be quiet. But no, there'll be one transfer and it'll be the old domino effect. So, yeah, we could be in for another late night. We've had a few in recent years, and this could well be another one, I think.
What have you made of the summer window so far? Has it been a classic, or do you think we're still waiting on that kind of blockbuster signing?
It's been a bit of a strange one, isn't it? It's sort of, some teams really strengthened. Celtic obviously brought back Jota, which their fans are delighted about. Cameron Carter-Vickers as well, but you know, there has maybe not been the big summer blockbuster we've maybe had in recent years, but I think some of the clubs have signed pretty well. St Mirren in particular, I've been quite impressed with them a few times. They've done pretty good business, I think. Look a good bit better this year than last year. So, yeah, there's not maybe been that big Roy Keane or, Lundberg or these types of guys joining the league. But I think the guys that have came in have been pretty good. Stephen Fletcher's come back. That's a big name and stuff like that. Well, not maybe a great start to Dundee United career, but there's been a few, but there's been no big marquee ones as yet, and unfortunately I don't think there'll be any before midnight. I might be stunned, but I can't see it.
Potsy, is there any club that's surprised you so far in the window, be it because they're quieter than normal or overly active?
Yeah, as I say, St Mirren's probably the one. I know if you speak to Stevie Robinson in the summer, he was looking to get a few boys in, and he's done his business really early. A lot of managers like to kind of maybe wait till the last gasp in case they're missing out on that big signing, but Stevie was very set in his ways that no, he was going to do most of his business, get it done and get the boys in to basically tell them what they want and what they expect so they could hit the league ground running. The Premier Sports Cup wasn't good for them. They had a bit of a slow start and fans were wanting them out, or some fans I should say were wanting them out. But, I think the boy Jonah Ayungu, who was with Stevie at Morecambe, has been a really, really good signing. He's 6'3", 6'4", big unit, strong, quick. He scored a good few goals already. So, St Mirren have done okay so far. They've won 3 games in the bounds, not conceded in the last 3. So they're looking okay. I think Hearts needed another striker, and they brought in Lawrence Shankland, who, as we know, will score goals in this league. He started well, scored again on Sunday against St Johnstone. So, yeah, I think Lawrence coming back, it's a good move for Hearts, and it's a very good move for Lawrence Shankland. Belgium didn't work out for him. He was disappointed. He's playing right wing back some games, and I don't think that's Lawrence's natural position. So, yeah, he's come back. He scored a few goals, and Scotland are obviously crying out for more firepower up top. So if you get a Lawrence Shankland scoring goals for Hearts, will do his confidence world good, and hopefully it could well see him back in the Scotland squad as well.
How does it actually work being a journalist at this time? How do you find out about transfers, and what's the process for following those things behind the scenes?
It can be lots of different things. Sometimes you get a tip from, you could get a tip from the manager, you could get a tip from a player, you get a tip from an agent, you could get a tip from a family member or a close friend to the player. It can come from a number of different places. It just depends on what the club or the player or the manager are wanting to do at that time. So it can be a variety of different positions. Obviously, we need to check things out. We need to make sure they are legit. We can't just go to print on a whim. We've got to kind of make phone calls and things like that. But yeah, at this time of year, you feel like your phone is pretty much glued to your hand, and you've got to have a loved one at home who understands that that's part of the gig. So thankfully, my lovely wife is very sort of, she knows football, she likes football, so she understands it's part of the job, and I'm taking 10:30 at night phone calls about a transfer. So yeah, it's a pretty frantic period, but yeah, it can come from all over the place, as I say, but it's it's good. It's what we love about it.
What's in it for, like, when you say like agents tip you off or managers tip you off? What's in it for them? Why do they do that?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, a manager might have an unhappy player, or he might have said to the player, "Look, I'll try and get you a move out," and he's making calls to clubs about certain players. It can be a number of things. Guys can be unhappy. They're not getting the minutes they want. They've maybe not been in the team this season. They're sitting in the stand, and no player wants to sit in a stand or not be involved. They want to play, So it's maybe the manager, saying to them, "Look, I'll see what I can do to help you out and try and get my move." So it's sometimes, what it's like, Laura, a player's name goes out into the public domain of such and such a club is interested in them, and all of a sudden other clubs go, "All right, didn't know he was available," and then they all charge in, and it becomes the player had one option in the morning, and by the afternoon he's got 5 options. So sometimes for clubs, players and managers, it's good to get a story out there, be it in our newspaper or online. It helps everybody, because they want ultimately to have a happy and settled squad. That's what every manager and every club wants.
It's a bit like a chess game, isn't it? Everyone's kind of predicting 2 moves ahead of each other and playing each other at their own game.
Yeah, it's bonkers, and this is what we'll see on Thursday night. We'll see one, and we saw it down south as well. You see one move happen, and then another move happens, and another move happens, because a manager could have his star striker sold on the Thursday afternoon and needs to replace him, so he brings in someone else, and they then need to bring in someone else, and the big circle just moves round. So yeah, it's going to be, it could be an eventful Thursday, we never know. It's always fun though, this is the thing, you just don't know what could happen, and everybody's on the edge of their seats, players, managers, agents, journalists, fans, everybody loves it. We all hate it at the same time, but we love it.
I know, it feels like we're really kind of, it almost like a day it brings us together. I mean, we see all these tweets like going out, like people saying they've seen Messi and Mbappe down Glasgow Airport and stuff like that. And like the way we consume deadline day has obviously changed in recent years. Has the social media aspect of things, has it made your life easier or harder?
A bit of both, to be honest. It can be, you hear so many like that, you hear so many bonkers rumours, and it used to be the old stories about taxi drivers, wasn't it, back in the day, about he had such and such in the back of his cab and all that, whereas now it is, we saw him down the main street and all that, and he's going to Celtic or Rangers or Kilmarnock or wherever. It can be, there's so many false rumours and stuff like that, and if you checked every one, you'd drive yourself daft. So, but it can be good in other ways, you get pictures of guys and players put things on social media, like sometimes you shake your head and go, why are you doing that? Here I am on the plane to Glasgow, and you go, all right, well, he's coming to Glasgow then, isn't he? So yeah, it has its good points and bad points, as social media does. So yeah, it depends. I mean, it can be tough sometimes, and you hear a million rumours a day, particularly when we're getting to this time of the year, but you just got to trust your sources and trust the guys that you speak to, that what they are telling you is correct.
I mean, for me, deadline day always kind of means chocolate and cheap sweets and pizza, free pizza, because we're all working like 15-hour shifts in the end, and you never know when your day's ending. But like that side of it has nothing to do with the actual work. I mean, do you actually enjoy it? Is it a fun day for you, or do you feel like it's kind of been overhyped into this sort of Sky Sports panto over the years?
Yeah, it has been a wee bit. I've had this chat with a mate of mine a couple of times who's not in the industry then, he's just a football fan, and he always says to me, he's like, how come there's like, the club will announce it at 11 o'clock at night that we've signed this guy, but when you look at the pictures, it's obviously been taken that during the day. And I kind of go, well, has you maybe thought that if they announce him at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you're going to want another signing before the window shuts? But if they announce it at 11, you go, that's great, we get that guy in the door before the window shut. So you kind of have to say, well, that's right, does it? It can be a bonkers night. I remember a few windows ago, I was on to a Premiership manager at 5 to 12. And he thought a deal was getting done. And you're trying to write a story saying it's looking like a deal's getting done. The paper's going to, be put out shortly. You're up against the clock. Your boss phoning you, going, what's happening with this? You think something's happening. And like 10 minutes later, the manager's phoning you and say, missed the deadline. So we're not bringing him in at all. So it's back to the status quo. So you're going from, I might have a story, to I've got no story because nothing's actually happened. So yeah, it can be frustrating. But there's other times where, guys get through at midnight. It's sitting up until after midnight. It is a very, very long day, as you well know. But yeah, it can be fun. It can be a lot of fun too.
You think I'm going to answer a stupid question like that?
Of course, journalists trying to keep across all things going on deadline day is just one side of things. But what I really want to know is what it's like on the other side. So Laura, you've worked at a few clubs now, and I suppose you're in a good place to tell us what actually happens behind the scenes on transfer deadline day. Is it exciting working transfer deadline day for a club?
Well, I mean, looking back on what I've done, I've worked at two different clubs on deadline day. I worked at Celtic and I worked at Motherwell, and this deadline day coming up will be my third time, and this will be my first time working in England for deadline day. It's actually a lot more enjoyable doing it for a club than it is as a journalist. I've done that flip side of things when I worked at STV, and what I didn't like about that side of things, you might be able to kind of share this feeling where there's a lot of pressure to be the first with everything, whether you're breaking the stories yourself or you're having to pick up announcements and statements as soon as possible. I was a rubbish journalist. I didn't like that side of things, the pressure on me, whereas when you're working for a club, it doesn't really matter who's gossiping about you, because you're going to be the first to break the news anyway. And in a way, you kind of set the deadlines yourself. So it's a lot more relaxed. You've got a lot more control over things. And it's exciting because the people coming in, the players coming in to sign are essentially new colleagues. And you get to meet new people that you're going to be working with. And you get to be creative with them and find out what they're like as people. And you get to just do fun, different content for announcing them and everything that comes after that as well. There's a lot less pressure when it comes to working for a club from a media perspective when it comes to transfers and signings and deadline day than it was compared to the journalist side of things.
Ewan, you're a writer for Football Scotland. What does deadline day look like for you?
Well, I'm actually off this deadline day, and I promise my boss, if he's listening, there's nothing to do with the deadline day coming up. But yeah, like Laura said, she's completely right. It's really quite stressful from a journalist point of view, just in terms of exactly what Laura said. You always have to be first. Not necessarily with the exclusive story, but if a signing signs, then you've got 6, 7, 8 publications all trying to be out first, because if you get it out first, you get probably get more clicks, and that's just what it's like. So it is quite stressful. I mean, it's not that enjoyable, to be honest. It's probably better from a club's point of view. So it's really interesting to hear kind of Laura's side of things compared to being from the outside looking in, trying to get the scoops and be there first with the stories.
We've just heard from Alan Potts. Laura, have you ever had to take calls from the likes of Alan or other journalists and kind of fob them off with lies to try and protect a secret deal that might be going on? Or what does it look from that side?
The amount of times I've ignored Potts' calls because I know what's coming. No, to be fair, you get asked questions when you're in that kind of comms role, and journalists, I mean, you don't take it personally, but you know that they're trying to be pally with you because they want to get inside scoops from you and they want to find out what's happening. But it's not always about like them looking for you to leak the news. Sometimes they just want steers, and I think kind of vouch for this again. Like sometimes it's just nice to know that if something's going to be happening, you could be finishing up your shift and you might be thinking, right, is there anything that's going to be happening the rest of the night? Like, did he just give me a heads up? Have you got anyone coming in? I'm not like looking to get exact names or anything, but it might just be a case of, are you done for the night? Is your business complete? Or should we kind of keep a hold of like an eye on what's happening at your club? So a lot of the time it is just coming down to steering. And like, as kind of Potsy touched on, the other side of that is like they'll be looking for leaks, but that more comes from like agents, managers, maybe like, I mean, dare say other people at the club, but not the media department anyway. And that's more, as kind of Potsy touched on, that's for different reasons. One of them might be to try and drum up interest for a player, like for an agent who wants to kind of get the name out there and pretend that there's interest in a player just to kind of get more clubs interested and such like. So yeah, I mean, you get a lot of communication with journalists at this time of the season, but it's not all like, it's not second hand or dirty handed or tactics or anything like that. Sometimes it's just really genuine and innocent.
You've joked on previous shows as well about how much you hate elaborate signing videos because of the amount of work that's involved. But how do you think those reveals have changed, like over the years and the various roles that you've had at different clubs? Have you seen like a kind of getting worse, or there's more pressure on them to make them look good?
God, it's changed so much. I mean, I look back in like when I was working at Celtic, we didn't even have a Twitter account for the first couple of deadline days I worked there, and that's making me sound really old. It was back in the day when you put up a web story, you'd have like a press release, and then things kind of changed with time. Like when I was at STV, clubs would tweet out links to statements, and that would be their big announcement, just quite simply putting text in a tweet. Then things obviously changed with time. Motherwell obviously it was kind of around the time of the big elaborate signing videos that really took off, which on one hand, yes, it's great, it's creative, it's unusual, it's different, it's really kind of getting that creative flair out there. But after the first couple, it becomes a competition, and that's kind of what I don't like about it, is when you're working in the game, you're kind of up against other clubs to really make an impact and better each other, and who can become more viral than the other and everything. Whereas when we were at Motherwell, we decided to kind of strip it back a wee bit and keep it more simplistic. So one of the kind of best ones we did was we took players out and about around the town, around Motherwell, to just areas that represented the town as Motherwell, not necessarily landmarks or anything, but it could be anything. It could be like the football pitches, a local park, Like, it didn't have to be quite like as obvious as the Steelworks, which again was a great location, but it was just anything around the town that represented Motherwell as a club and united the fans and brought them together and had that kind of local culture. And that was just photos. So when the new player came in, we would do stuff with them and we'd then just take them out for a photo instead of doing a big elaborate let's act out something here. Whereas now my experiences at West Ham, it's different. We have been announcing players with a reveal video and then a big interview, which, I mean, even you look at, we're recording this on Monday. Today, we announced Lucas Paqueta. The reveal video to that was we went up on the roof of the London Stadium and we got a drone to film him standing there. And that just shows you how elaborate some of these videos get. We filmed for about 2 hours this morning. Wow. And that reveal video was about 20 seconds long. Yeah. It just, the amount of, that is part of the reason, because I'm behind the scenes, the amount of work that goes into this for the fans just to watch a 20-second video, just to get likes and retweets, that's a part of it that I don't like. I just like to keep my signings straightforward, my announcements straightforward. Sometimes
though I find that the most simplistic ones work best. Like I just obviously been at West Ham, or the one with James Richardson. I think it was with Scamacca, and it was like the old Football Italia. I loved it. I watched the whole thing. I'm not a West Ham fan. I had no affiliation to the club, but I watched the whole interview just because it was nostalgic, and I think Scamacca said used some Cockney rhyming slang at one point as well, which was quite funny. It was just great. That's probably my favourite one of the summer. Sometimes the most elaborate ones, like I'm a Manchester United supporter, and I remember Alexis Sanchez playing the keyboard, and that still haunts me to this day. It didn't work out, so I think simplistic sometimes better. But
then you've got on the flip side that you're mentioning that one there. When we were at Motherwell, we parodied it. That's when right. One of the players signed a new contract, and that in itself became a theme as well. It was almost like, right, can we rip the piss out of other clubs that are doing such and such, and to be honest, that was actually quite unusual for Motherwell to do something like that, because it wasn't quite in keeping with everything else that we ended up doing. But again, that went viral. That was, the numbers in that were mental. So it's just, and I can see why clubs do it, because they'll see the numbers and they see it as, right, this is successful, let's keep doing something like this. It's reflective of the times that we live in, and the social media and the culture that we've got right now.
Just looking ahead to the actual deadline day this week then, and this is a question I'll come to you on this, Euan. Are you anticipating it being a big night potentially? Do you think that there are any clubs in any of the divisions that need to be looking to do quite a lot of business before the window slams shut?
I think in Scotland, when two clubs kind of dominate the landscape, so you're looking at those two in terms of, can they make a big move? I think Celtic are done. Rangers is maybe one to keep an eye on just because of the Morelos situation. Mm-hmm. They've also been boosted by the Champions League money just last week, so I think they could maybe move for someone, maybe another striker. Hearts, I think Hearts will be quite busy. They've picked up, I think, 3 injuries at the weekend. I think Boyce looks quite serious, so that might impact their business as well. Hibs, who knows what's going on at Hibs. Then all the other clubs, I think what you'll find maybe is, like, towards the last couple of days, is you'll see a lot of lower league clubs maybe look at players that are not playing in the Premiership. Mm. They've had maybe 4 or 5 game weeks now. There'll be players who haven't got a sniff, who won't be happy and want to go out on loan. So I know that some Championship clubs, kind of wait until the last couple of days and look to see if they can pick up some loan deals. But I think it's going to be a relatively quiet window, deadline day in Scotland. There'll probably be a lot of moves, but I don't see any big Robbie Keanes or Aaron Ramsey's or Ross Barkley rumours are floating about. But I don't see how either Rangers or Celtic can afford his wages. I think he was on over 150 grand a week at Chelsea. So yeah, I don't think that's going to be happening.
Potentially one club that might be looking to do a little bit of business and get some players in might be Dundee United, but we'll be looking ahead to that in just a wee minute.
Turnbull to whip it in. It is another one, and it is Carl Starfelt with his second of the season, and Celtic are on course for their biggest ever away win in the league.
Yes, there's really only one place to start this week, and that's at Tannadice, where Celtic racked up the biggest away win in the league in their history, knocking a sorry Dundee United for 9. It was fairly emphatic from Celtic. Is it one of those things that was a bit of a perfect storm, Laura, between one side that looks so unstoppable in the way that they play attacking football and another that's just, they look to have dropped off a cliff since that defeat in the Netherlands a couple of weeks ago?
Oh, I think you've got it right there. We were talking Celtic up last week saying, like, who's going to stop them? It's probably the worst possible timing for Dundee United to take on a team of that form, considering their own poor form. I mean, you're saying Celtic's best ever away win. It was Dundee United's worst ever home defeat. And it just feels like there's no light at the end of the tunnel for them right now. It's embarrassing for them. I mean, they've conceded 23 goals in 5 games and scored 1. They're sitting bottom of the table. A club like Dundee United should not be sitting bottom of the Premiership. There just feels like there's no mentality. The mentality's all wrong. There's no fit. Like, who's fighting for who in that team right now? Who's actually stepping up and taking control? Because, like, the way things are going, the players aren't doing their jobs right. Jack Ross is just, like, the fans have turned on him already, and he's barely been in the job 5 minutes. The thing with the Celtic game was, it was very, like, similar to what happened in Holland, where they went, right, okay, fine, they conceded after 15 minutes, but they kind of held their own for a bit after that. And then it was like the parting of the sea all over again. They conceded on 40 minutes, 45 plus 2, 45 plus 6, 50, 55 and 59. It's just like, it was the same that happened against AZ Alkmaar. There was just this like 15-20 minute spell where they just absolutely capitulated. And that's partly a mentality thing. You need to be headstrong when you lose goals, and they just absolutely, they're crumbling right now. And there's so many problems that have to be addressed. It's not a good time for the club.
Something else that might not have gone down well with the fans on a fairly tragic day for them was Mark Birighitti, Dundee United's goalkeeper, albeit he didn't play, but he was on the bench, liking Joe Hart's post-match post about the victory.
No, it's not a great look, is it? It's not what your fans want to come on social and see, that he's the name that's liked the Instagram post. It's not a good look. Just keep quiet on a night like that.
Euan, Celtic did look absolutely terrifying at times. There seems to be almost like a simplicity to a lot of their play, the way that they're just able to seamlessly carve through defences and rack up these big scorelines. Can you see anything being able to stop them from winning the title this season?
There's only one club, isn't it? It's going to be Rangers, the only team that are capable of stopping them. I actually said on Sunday watching it, I don't think any team outside of their Glasgow rivals are capable of beating Celtic this season. That's quite a big claim to make. You know, I think they might drop points in terms of drawing, but I just think they're so far ahead. And you know, naturally that's going to be the case. You know, look at their revenue compared to the other clubs. You know, Jota's probably cost more than most of other clubs' annual revenue. So you know, you've got to put things into perspective. But it was, like Laura said, it was an embarrassing performance from Dundee United. They don't look like they're playing for the manager, which is a real concern. They've also got some big name players who sat on the bench on Sunday, which I thought was really telling. And kind of, you know, Charlie Mulgrew, Tony Watt. So I think it all kind of suggests it's all not well in the dressing room. But Celtic were, you know, they were outstanding. They started the season in great form. I think when judging this Celtic side, you have to look at them in Europe this season, because I think they were poor last season in Europe. They obviously got knocked out 3 competitions. You know, Celtic are expected to beat these teams every week, but the manner in which they're doing so is incredibly impressive. And yeah, it looks like, you know, the game on the weekend and Saturday, you know, when Rangers go to Parkhead is going to be pivotal. I think Rangers have Aberdeen away after that as well, so you know, the title race could look very different, you know, in a fortnight's time.
I was making the point last week of how good or how relentless Celtic have been since the winter break last year. Just looking at 2022 alone, Celtic have played 18 matches in the league, won 17 and drawn 1, whereas Rangers over the same period have, over the 18 games, won 11, drawn 5 and lost 2. So there would be a point difference even between those two of 14 points if the league table's just from 2022 alone. So it does look to be that they're in formidable form going into the next couple of fixtures. But it wasn't just at Tannadice the goals were raining down. There were a total of 27 goals across the 6 Premiership matches, making it actually one of the highest scoring ever in Scottish football, and certainly the highest scoring round of fixtures since the top flight moved to 12 teams in the 2000-2001 season. Aberdeen fired 5 past Livingston. Are they starting to finally find their form?
It's looking like it, isn't it? This was a good game for them. Things went in their favour from the start because Fitzwater got sent off for Livy and gave away the penalty, which opened the scoring. Rory followed through, absolutely bulleted home into the top corner for Aberdeen's second goal. That was a beauty. They then got another penalty. Miovski got his second. That was some good build-up play from Johnny Hayes, actually. And then Ryan Duncan. So this is a kid that's come through. He's 18 years old. He was away last season, actually, at Peterhead on loan, just to kind of get some time, get some experience and minutes under his belt. He's also played for Scotland as well at youth level. So this is like kind of prospect that's coming through the ranks at Aberdeen. He got his first goal for the club and sealed the 5th goal. So really, really good for him. And it just encapsulates that kind of good feeling right now. There's 2 wins in the bounce for them. They've moved up to 4th in the table. It's a lot more around the vicinity where Aberdeen should be in the league after a horror kind of last season or so. And it really kind of feels like Jim Goodwin's really kind of getting it together now. We kind of tipped them at the start of the season to be doing well, considering the transfer window that they've had this summer. And it might just be a case of things are starting to click now, and it's looking a bit positive for them.
Kilmarnock picking up the first win of the season as well, so it'll be good for them to get off the mark there. Rangers put 4 past Ross County. There was another refereeing decision that was slightly contentious in this match, this time probably going in Rangers' favour. I think we can all be agreed that James Sands should have been sent off. St Mirren keeping up their run of recent good form as well by beating Hibs. And just moving down to the Championship as well, Ayr beating Dundee on Friday night to hold on to that first spot in the table. Euan, is this form a little bit of a surprise from Ayr United?
Yes. I don't think anyone would have thought they'd be top of the league. I certainly didn't so early in the season, but they played well. I've watched them twice now. I watched them on Friday night. It was a televised game and they were good. They deserved their win. They went 1-0 down quite early on through Zach Rudden, who obviously left Thistle last season to play Premiership football. And didn't work out too well for him, Zach. They came back into it and they're flying at the moment. It's good for them. And the thing with the Championship as well, every team can beat each other. Unlike the top flight, every team's capable of beating each other. The results it's difficult to predict. So you never know. If you pick up 3 wins in the bounce or 3 wins in 5, and you're going to prepare yourself right up the table, especially early on. And I think Ayr, I don't think, even if you asked the most optimistic Ayr fan if they thought they'd be top of the table so early on in the season, they'd probably say no. So good, all credit to them.
Speaking of surprise results, an unforeseen, impressive away win by Morton up at Cally Thistle as well. But just looking at your team as well, Partick Thistle, the first half goals there saw them stay second in the Championship this weekend. Is the dream of going up still alive, Euan?
Yeah, it's alive and kicking, isn't it? I don't want to be too optimistic, but I think Thistle probably have the best squad on paper in the league. They've got really good balance across the squad. I think Scott Tiffany's one of the best players in the league when he's on his day. He's back fit. They brought in a boy from Cove Rangers called Harry Milne, who I think could easily be playing in the top flight. I think he will be playing in the top flight. It's just a matter of time. Hopefully it's with Thistle next season. Cole McKinnon's come in from Rangers and he scored on his debut for Rangers against Hearts the last game of the season. I think they've got high hopes from at Ibrox. We've had some Rangers loanees that have not done so well, but Cole looks like he's is certainly going to do a good job. And yeah, I think that it also helps having a pitch that's got grass on it this season as well. I think the players are enjoying playing in that, so it all looks good at Firhill at the moment. So may it continue as long as possible.
Were there any other results that stood out for you looking at League 1 and League 2 this weekend as well? I
think maybe League 1, obviously it was the top 2 played. AJ played Dunfermline, finished 1 each. I think that was maybe the most kind of predictable result. There's not much between those two sides. the big worry for me is with Celtic Hearts, who've really not started the season well at all. Obviously, after Kevin Thompson's surprise departure, John Potter's came in, and they're really not doing well. And you wonder if maybe that's them hit their ceiling, because a lot was obviously made of the clubs that had progressed through the pyramid from obviously the Lowland League, etc., Highland League. You've got Cove Rangers as well, who are struggling in the Championship at the moment, but Celtic haven't won in their first 5 games. They've lost 4. So I think it'd be interesting to see where they go from here, because I think they might have reached their ceiling, and League One might be about survival this season, to be honest, rather than anything else.
Going from one Hearts to another, let's just jump back up to the Premiership and talk about another game that was fantastic for the neutral to watch. Hearts came out top in a 5-goal thriller at home to St Johnstone, Laura.
Yeah, this was a good one. I was working on Sunday, so I missed this one, but I saw the highlights, and it looked like a great game for the neutral. Difficult one for Hearts, I think. I think on another day this could have been really comfortable for them, but they're coming off the back of a very difficult European game. St Johnstone really kind of a difficult side to play. They really showed their character to pull through this one. So obviously St Johnstone took the lead. Hearts managed to turn it round, and they went into the break 2-1 up, and they constantly got the equaliser. And then it was quite late on. I think it was maybe 82 minutes. Hearts got the penalty. Liam Gordon with a kind of poor late challenge of Barry Mackay, and Shanklin converted it to seal the points. That's 4 goals in 7 games for Shanklin. So I revert right back to one of the first episodes we did of this show, where I said he would make it at Hearts. It was too big a move for him, and every single week he's proven me wrong. So fair play to the boy. But yeah, so Hearts up to 3rd in the table, and as I say, they really had to dig deep for this result. But when you've got that sort of character to pull you through on days like this, that's the important thing. They've shown they're headstrong, and they got the 3 points as a result for it.
And that result comes just 2 days after the Jambos were drawn in a UEFA Europa Conference group with Istanbul, Başakşehir, Fiorentina and Latvian side RFS. Do you think that's a pretty good draw for them, Euan?
Yeah, I think it's like a dream draw, especially after not qualifying for the Europa League. And if you look who Zurich got, they got Arsenal, didn't they? So that'd have been a brilliant draw if kind of Hearts had been there. But I mean, a trip to Florence will be pretty nice for the Hearts fans. Big team, nice stadium, lovely city, so that's great. And they probably look at it as well. And I think, I don't know too much about Latvia, but I've heard that Riga is a really nice place to go as well. So I think when you're a fan of these clubs, you're really looking at the away days, aren't you? Especially after being not in Europe for so long, they'll be looking at the away days. And as a Thistle fan, I'll probably never get to see my side play away in Europe. So good luck to them. Hopefully they go over their numbers. They seem to enjoy Zurich, and I think they've got a decent enough chance of maybe finishing 2nd. I don't think it's out with the realms of possibility that Hearts can do that. I thought they actually played really well against Zurich until George Grant decided to dive for absolutely no reason, to be honest. And Istanbul as well, I don't know too much about them, but again, it's another quite a good city to go and visit, isn't it? So I mean, in terms of the away days, it's brilliant. I think that's what the fans will be looking at it, because I think even the most optimistic fan from Hearts knows that they're not going to win that tournament.
We should also talk about the Champions League draw as well. Rangers with a brilliant away win in Eindhoven last week to take them into the group stages proper for the first time in over a decade, and meaning that we have 2 Scottish sides in the group stages of the Champions League for the first time in 15 years. Let's have a wee look at the groups here, Laura. Do you want to maybe take us through Celtic's group? They were drawn in Group B with Real Madrid, RB Leipzig and Shakhtar Donetsk.
Yes, it's a tasty one. There's some big names. I mean, you can't really kind of knock the likes of Courtois and Hazard and Benzema coming to Celtic Park. It's yet another one of these big nights to look forward to, where the big stars come to play. And I wouldn't doubt for a second if Celtic really kind of put on a show and hold them to something there. The other 2 ties, obviously Leipzig and Shakhtar Donetsk, look brilliant to get an away tie to Germany. I think that's every kind of football fan's dream, I think. That'll be amazing for them. Shakhtar Donetsk as well, they they actually came up against them quite recently. It was 2005 they played them, and also 2008. If I remember rightly, there was actually a last-minute goal against Shakhtar Donetsk at home to win the game in the Champions League in 2008. I think the ties against them quite tight over the times. Obviously, they won't be going to Ukraine for their away leg, but they've been playing their games in Poland, and it was Legia Warsaw's ground that they've been playing at. Celtic fans don't have great memories of going to Legia Warsaw, but different team and time to rewrite history for them.
And then just looking to Rangers group as well, it's a pretty tasty draw they've got. Ajax, Liverpool and Napoli. The Napoli manager Luciano Spalletti actually made comments about how excited he is with the draw and the history of those four clubs all being brought together. There's an Ibrox return very early for Calvin Bassey, of course, who just moved to Ajax in the summer.
I loved his reaction. Did you see his reaction to the
it
draw?
Was very sweet.
It was very sweet. That's the word for it. That is exactly the word for it.
He also apparently dropped in on the Rangers team when they were playing the match over in the Netherlands last week as well, just to say hi to the team. It's always tasty as well, isn't it, when we get a tie that throws up an English team against a Scottish team? Are you looking forward to the game against Liverpool? I'm only asking because of your slightly unhealthy obsession, Laura, with Scotland national team captain Andrew Robertson.
Oh, I know. I'll be drawn in that one, actually. That's a good point. I think everyone loves a good Battle of Britain when it comes to these European games. I'm absolutely still, all these days later, devastated that West Ham didn't draw Hearts in the Conference League. So at least to see Rangers take on Liverpool. I think when Celtic played Liverpool a few years back, it was there's been some good ties there against them in their run to the Europa League, the UEFA Cup final, and there was one. A previous tie with them as well, not long before that. They're really, really tasty fixtures. I think also, as you're saying, Andy Robertson up against Rangers, he will know exactly what to expect from them. And I think there'll be an element of pride there with him, but also determination, because he'll want to prove himself coming back to Scotland for these games and making a mark, which just there's a nice added kind of rivalry there.
You'll get a nice reception at Ibrox as well, I'm sure. Even as a Scotland captain, I'm sure he'll get a lovely welcome by the Ibrox faithful, given his allegiances.
Absolutely. But before we can even think about Scottish clubs in Europe, or indeed this weekend's league fixtures, we've got the small matter of the Premier Sports Cup this midweek. Euan, are there any particular ties that stand out to you?
Yeah, Dundee United's trip to Tony Macaroni will be I think it's a tie of the round. Not in terms of, I don't expect it to be a beautiful, free-flowing game of football or anything like that, but just the kind of context given what happened at the weekend, Dundee United getting beaten 9-0. If they don't get a result against Livy, they can't get a result. There can't be a draw. They need to win. So if they don't win it doesn't look great at all for Jack Ross, in my opinion, because that's them now out of cup competition as well. I think they're away to Motherwell at the weekend off the top of my head. But just the fact of losing 9-0, there's got to be a reaction. There has to be. If there's not, then it just says that the dressing room's gone. They're not behind the manager, which I think could well be the final nail in the coffin, albeit he's only been in there for under 10 games. And it just, if the players don't perform, then after getting beaten 9-0, then there's something seriously wrong.
Regrets? No, it's good laugh on it. So
I didn't find it funny.
11 points from 15, 10 goals scored and no defeats so far. As we touched on earlier, Ayr United are sitting pretty at the top of the championship. Managing director Graeme Mathie took over at the club midway through last season. He's had previous roles scouting and coaching at Celtic and was more recently at Hibs as sporting director. He's since taken the reins at Somerset Park and he joins us now to talk about life at the top of the table. So Graeme, for those who don't know the ins and outs of football roles, what actually is a managing director at a football club?
Good question. I suppose it's taken me a bit of time to try and figure that out myself, to be honest. But even the role as a sporting director, you get asked that quite a lot. You know, what is the key task? And I guess it does vary hugely from club to club. One of the big attractions for me about coming to Ayr United was that there seemed to be a real kind of synergy between, you know, the experiences that the owner and the board had in running the club, particularly on the kind of business side, the commercial side and the infrastructure side, and maybe where some of the gaps existed and their experience of being involved day to day in the kind of football environment. So my role as a managing director encompasses about everything. I'm learning about season ticket campaigns. I'm learning about media strip launches and all of that stuff. But I'm still very much hands-on in terms of trying to support the football department as best I can as well. So it's an exciting role, and I'm loving every minute.
How did you kind of find the club when you first went in? What kind of state was it in when you inherited it?
I suppose I would go back even further, Laura. So I spent a bit of time when I left Hibs really trying to kind of speak to a lot of people who were involved in the game from different perspectives. Because I suppose when you're involved day to day and you've got your own job and your own role at a football club, it's the only real perspective that you have on life in football. So I spoke to a number of managers who were in work, some managers who were out of work at the time, and a couple of owners as well, just to maybe see what are the stresses from all these different roles, what type of things do they think, how do they think the world should be at a club. And meeting David Smith at Ayr, the first time I met him, I sat and chatted to him for 2 hours, and within probably half an hour of that, I thought this is a guy I could really work with. Found his honesty really, really refreshing. His clarity on the things that he felt he was good at, and the experiences that he brought to the table were great. And then also, really honest to sort of say maybe some mistakes that had been made over the period of time, and maybe some of his reflections on that. So that was a huge attraction for me coming in. And I guess in every club, you've got perceptions. I think when you walk through the door, I really didn't want to, and I must admit, and I don't mind sort of sharing this, one of the conversations I had with David and the board was that they wanted continuity in the manager's position. And that was really clear that, they didn't want another change, because he'd had, I think, 3 over the past 12 months. And Jim Duffy was in position at the time. So yeah. I joined the club officially, I think, on a sort of Tuesday, and we played Queen of the South away on a Saturday. And after that game and over the weekend, there was a number of conversations about, what will we do? The team weren't performing on the pitch. The game itself was quite a sort of heavy loss to Queen of the South away from home. And I think as a board, it was decided that maybe we had to try and make a change. So that was a week leading up to Christmas. So I'd gone from this period of time after leaving Hibs where kind of family life was actually not too bad, and I was starting to get a wee bit of time to myself to have my own reflections and work through it. And then the week before Christmas, I'm thrust back into trying to recruit a new manager, and the transfer window upon us, and the team 2 points off the bottom of the league. So it was a baptism of fire, that's for sure.
Hi Graeme, I'll start by owing you an apology, because in my championship preview column this season I tipped us to be engulfed in a relegation battle. So
please continue to say these things. That would be wonderful. That would be concerned.
So other than proving me wrong, of course, I mean, what other successes have you enjoyed at the club so far, in your opinion?
Yeah, I guess what we tried to do at the club when I first came in, and listen, there was loads of kind of short-term things to do, looking at potentially upgrading the training facilities and being able to access different facilities. A lot of really basic stuff, maybe trying to use some of the kind of GPS data a bit better so that we know where players are loading properly and make sure that they're actually training at the appropriate levels and things. Again, trying to blend in some of the new signings into a group that was, at that time competing at the wrong end of the table. But in the background, we started to work away on something that was a bit like a club plan. And I don't want this to sound overly kind of grandiose, because it's not meant to be, but, just a bit of clarity about what the club's actually about, the direction that it wants to take, and then try and get everybody aligned and bought into it. And that piece of work for me was really exciting. It was a big reason that I wanted to join a club like Ayr, and think to myself, can we actually work together? And that's been a real focal point of what we've tried to bring to the club. But work together with the staff, with the supporters, with the board, with the player group, get everybody aligned in what the vision should be, and we took loads of input from all those different groups and when we pulled it together. And then the most exciting bit for me is really actually seeing that lived out. So it's great, and listen, I appreciate you guys, want to have a chat with us about the kind of direction of travel and what's happening at Ayr United. But, we're not naive. You're doing it because we've had some good results on the pitch recently. But there's been loads of work going in the last 6 or 7 months, and that's not always reflected on the team winning games at 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. So I guess that is a big part of my job, is making sure that we can have a real unity within the group. So, there's only 16, 17 full-time members of staff at the club. It's not a lot of people. And actually, they work incredibly hard, and they're spread quite thin across 3 or 4 different areas. And most of the people. So for me, it's about making sure that we've got that unity together, that we can help each other out, that we're aligned in where we're going, and that we can actually kind of ride through some of the bumps in the road. Because we've been honest enough with the supporters to say it's great to have a vision, it's great to have a plan, it's great to have a direction of travel, but it doesn't mean you win every week. And this division, particularly in the Scottish Championship, winning 3 games in a row that we've just done is brilliant, but it's also very rare. So, we need to make sure we've got enough resilience about us when inevitably we don't win as regular as we are at the moment.
Obviously, the results in the park have been fantastic at this point. And I know you guys are trying to keep grounded and not get too far ahead of yourselves. But talking about aims on the park this season, where did you realistically set a target for yourselves to be this season? And just that little bit looking ahead to what could happen if you're able to keep this up over the course of the season. Ayr haven't been in the top flight of Scottish football for, oh goodness me, 40 odd years. I think it was the 77-78 season was their last one there. Just how much would it mean potentially getting to the top flight to the fans and to the town?
Well, what we've said in our vision document is we want to inspire the town of Ayr. I live locally, and the football club has historically been an absolute focal point of that town.
Yeah.
And we do want to inspire the town. So the last few games have been brilliant atmospheres. The 1,900 Ayr fans came on Friday night, a game live on the telly when it was pouring with rain up until about an hour before kickoff. That excites me to think that the football team's doing something that's actually wanting people to be a part of it. And that's one part. So, Lee Bullen and I have got a great relationship, and we can speak really openly with each other. And he's called me a dreamer on more than one occasion. But he's also caveated by saying in a good way. So, of course, we have dreams about where Ayr United can be on the pitch. I wouldn't have come to the club if I thought, life was just going to be trying to avoid relegation from the Championship. That's a bit rubbish. We want to have dreams about the team. And we've said it, we want to create history. We've kind of said we want to do it on and off the pitch. So the chairman's got some brilliant plans that will absolutely create history off the pitch, with some of the buildings and the infrastructure that he's putting in place. But we do want to create history on the pitch, and we want to take this football club and this football team beyond where it's been before. I temper that though by saying I'm also inherently geeky. So whilst I've got this bit that wants to dream dreams and all that sort of stuff, I work really closely with our head of recruitment, Keith Glendinning, who's been a fantastic addition to the staff at Ayr, and I'm really thankful that the board backed me to bring him in with me in December. But Keith will be really clear and say, here is the number of points we need to finish in X position, Y position, Z position in the league. Here's how many goals that we need to score. Here's how many draws, wins and losses that we can have. So we are kind of clear on what we need to pull together as part of the squad to improve on where we got last year. And I'm backing up Lee Bullen when he mentioned it in his pre-match interview on Friday and saying, for Ayr, they avoided relegation on the last day of the season for the last two years. So progress for us would be working towards somewhere about mid-table. But when you're in a 10-team league, mid-table's not a million miles away from the promotion playoff. So yeah. I guess we want to see progress. We're definitely seeing progress off the park at the club. There's a new building called a Hub that the chairman put up within about a year of taking over ownership of the club. So new supporters bar, beer garden, new club shop, new offices for the staff. That's progress. That's probably the first big capital investment Ayr United's had since 1910. Since the place was built. And he's going to put another one on with planning permission to come over the next couple of weeks and a spade in the ground next year on a new stand. So there's absolutely progress off the pitch. And I guess myself and Lee are absolutely determined to make sure there's progress on the pitch as well from where it's been over the last few seasons.
Just when you mentioned the new stand, the renovations to the stand there, how's that looking like? Why was that such an important thing to address so kind of early on in your time at the club?
It wasn't myself, though. I mean, the chairman, even when I spoke about coming on board, had talked about that. That is his kind of business. So he owns a large construction company in Ayrshire. So he likes building stuff, and part of his vision was to actually leave a legacy for future generations. So what's really interesting to me, and as I say, I live in the town, but the supporters absolutely love Somerset Park, and it's a proper old school throwback to what football used to be like many moons ago. And it was really interesting when he shared his plans for the new stand. So word got out a little bit that there was maybe going to be a bit of change at the stadium. And the supporters were absolutely adamant that it couldn't be, you know, some modern all-seater stand. They just wouldn't have it. And when he showed them the plans, it's kind of terracing halfway up and then a number of seats beyond that, hospitality rooms and everything else. They were delighted, you know, that they could still find themselves standing in the terracing in the North Terrace at Somerset Park. So it was quite interesting for me, you know, it's something I didn't expect, because I guess you would imagine most fans would want something that was really ultra modern and everything else. But I think the designs are great and they just absolutely fit with the kind of culture that we're trying to have at the club, which is to be modern and forward thinking, but also, you know, really aware of the kind of history and traditions that we've got in the background as well.
Well, that's all from us this week. As always, thank you so much for listening. My thanks to Laura and Euan for the pleasure of their company on the podcast. Thank you also to Alan and Graeme for joining us. We'll be back next Tuesday. Until then, have a terrific week.